The microwave hummed its familiar tune of domestic defeat as I reheated Tuesday's meatloaf for the third time this week. 3:17 a.m., and here I was, standing in my own kitchen like a stranger in his own life, listening to the rhythmic ping of text notifications coming from Lisa's home office down the hall. Ping, ping, ping. Must be one hell of a legal brief, I muttered to the empty kitchen, though we both knew her law practice didn't require midnight consultations. Not unless her clients had developed a sudden fondness for heart emojis and miss you messages. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Jake Morrison, 34 years old, owner of Morrison Tech Repair, a modest business that keeps the good people of Millfield's computers and phones running. Nothing glamorous, but honest work that pays the bills and keeps my hands busy. What it doesn't do is compete with whatever, or whoever, has been keeping my wife glued to her phone for the past 3 months. The meatloaf tasted like cardboard, but then again, everything tasted like cardboard these days. I'd been married to Lisa for 6 years, and somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being a couple and started being roommates who occasionally argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Ping. Ping. Jesus Christ, Lisa, I called out, knowing she wouldn't answer. She never answered anymore unless it was to tell me she was too busy for dinner, too tired for conversation, or too stressed for anything resembling intimacy. The woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes now looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that needed dusting. I was scraping the last of the congealed gravy from my plate when I heard the front door open. Lisa's sister, Melissa, breezed in without knocking, a habit that had started annoying Lisa but somehow never bothered me, maybe because Melissa still smiled when she saw me. "Jake, you're up late." She kicked off her heels and padded into the kitchen in her stocking feet. At 28, Melissa was everything her older sister used to be, warm, spontaneous, and blessed with the kind of laugh that made you want to tell better jokes. "Could say the same about you," I replied, rinsing my plate. "Hot date?" "Terrible date. The guy spent 2 hours explaining cryptocurrency while I pretended to care." She opened the fridge and grabbed a beer, popping it open with the bottle opener magneted to the side. "Where's my charming sister?" "Working. Always working." I nodded toward the office, where the typing had momentarily stopped, replaced by what sounded suspiciously like a phone call conducted in hushed tones. Melissa raised an eyebrow. "At 3 a.m? That's dedication?" "That's one word for it." She studied my face with those green eyes that ran in their family, the same eyes that used to look at me with love instead of distraction. "You okay, Jake? You look like someone stole your lunch money." "Just tired. Running a business, you know how it is?" "Actually, I don't. I'm still figuring out what I want to be when I grow up." She took a long pull from her beer and leaned against the counter. "But I know what miserable looks like, and you're wearing it like a cheap suit." Before I could respond, Lisa's voice drifted from the office, soft, intimate, nothing like the clipped professional tone she used with actual clients. Or with me, for that matter. Melissa's expression shifted. "Is she?" "Probably just a client," I lied, and we both knew it. The conversation in the office continued, punctuated by Lisa's low laugh, a sound I hadn't heard directed at me in months. Melissa set down her beer and moved closer, her hand finding my arm. "Jake, I'm sorry. I had no idea things were this bad." "They're not bad, they're just different." I looked at her hand on my arm, surprised by how long it had been since someone had touched me with genuine affection. "Marriage isn't always a fairy tale, right? It shouldn't be a prison sentence either." Her words hung in the air between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. The office door opened, and Lisa appeared in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. I know, but we can't rush this. These things take time." She noticed us in the kitchen, and her expression hardened. "I'll call you back." She ended the call and approached us with the kind of forced smile she reserved for difficult clients. "Mel, what are you doing here so late?" "Bad date. Needed beer and sympathy." Melissa's hand was still on my arm, and I noticed Lisa's eyes flick to it with something that might have been irritation. Or jealousy. Hard to tell the difference anymore. "Well, some of us have early meetings tomorrow." Lisa's tone carried a dismissal that would have worked on anyone else. "Some of us have lives outside of work," Melissa shot back, her protective instincts kicking in. "When's the last time you and Jake did something together? Something that didn't involve you staring at your phone?" "My career is important, Mel. Some people understand that. And some people understand that marriage requires 2 participants." The tension in the kitchen could have been cut with a knife, I found myself caught between two women who were really arguing about me, which should have been flattering, but mostly felt exhausting. "Ladies, it's late. Maybe we should—" "You're right," Lisa interrupted. "It is late. Mel, you should probably head home." "Actually," Melissa said, finishing her beer in one long gulp, "I think I'll crash in the guest room, unless that's a problem?" Lisa's jaw tightened. "Of course not. You're always welcome here." The lie was so obvious it practically had neon lights around it, but Melissa just smiled and headed toward the guest room. "Thanks, sis. Night, Jake." She squeezed my arm as she passed, a gesture of solidarity that wasn't lost on Lisa. After Melissa disappeared down the hall, my wife turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You two seem cozy." "She's being nice. Remember nice? It's when people treat each other with basic human kindness." "Don't be an ass, Jake." "Wouldn't dream of it. Heaven knows we can't all be as charming as your midnight clients." Her face flushed. "That was work." "Sure it was. Just like all the other work calls that happen after I go to bed." For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. Her mouth opened, and something vulnerable flickered across her features. Then her phone buzzed with another text, and the moment passed. "I'm going to bed," she announced, already reaching for her phone. "Good idea. Don't want to keep your client waiting." She paused at the kitchen doorway. "You know what your problem is, Jake. You've gotten bitter." "And you know what your problem is, Lisa? You've gotten careless." She left without another word, taking her phone and her secrets with her. I stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the detritus of my failed marriage, wondering when exactly I'd become the villain in my own life story. From the guest room, I could hear Melissa moving around, settling in for the night. At least someone in this house still treated me like a human being worth talking to. I turned off the kitchen lights and headed to bed, where I'd lie awake listening to Lisa type messages to someone who wasn't me, wondering how long a man could live on scraps of attention before he started looking for a real meal. The answer, as I was about to discover, was exactly 3 weeks and 2 days. The thing about temptation is that it rarely arrives wearing a red dress and carrying a pitchfork. More often, it shows up in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, asking if you want coffee while your wife ignores you at the breakfast table. "Jake, you want some?" Melissa held up the coffee pot, her hair still messed from sleep, looking more appealing than any woman had a right to at 7 in the morning. "Please." I pushed my mug across the counter, careful not to let our fingers touch. 3 days of having her in the house had turned me into a teenager again, hyper-aware of every casual contact, every shared smile. Lisa sat at the kitchen table, already dressed for work in her power suit armor, scrolling through emails with the dedication of a monk studying scripture. She'd acknowledged Melissa's presence with a grunt, and my existence with less than that. "Sleep well?" I asked my wife, knowing the answer. "Fine." She didn't look up from her phone. "I'll be late tonight. Big case." "Another one?" That's 4 nights this week. Some of us have careers that require actual effort. The barb hit its mark, as intended. Melissa's hand tightened on the coffee pot, and I saw her jaw clench. She'd been watching our interactions with growing dismay, seeing what I'd become numb to, the casual cruelty that had replaced conversation in our marriage. "Right. Well, try not to work too hard." I kept my voice neutral, but Melissa caught the sarcasm. Lisa finally looked up, her expression annoyed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just concerned about your health. All those late nights can't be good for you." "My health is fine, thanks." "Good to know. Wouldn't want anything to interfere with your dedication." The word hung in the air like smoke. Lisa's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID, and her expression softened in a way that made my stomach clench. "I have to take this." She stood, already answering. "Good morning." "Yes, I got your message." She walked toward her office, voice dropping to that intimate tone I'd heard too many times lately. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. "Jesus, Jake?" Melissa set down the coffee pot harder than necessary. "How long has she been treating you like dirt?" "It's not that bad." "Bullshit. I've been here 3 days, and she's barely acknowledged you exist. When she does talk to you, it's like you're something she stepped in." I took a sip of coffee, buying time. "Marriage is complicated, Mel. Marriage is supposed to involve 2 people who actually like each other." She moved closer, her voice dropping. "You deserve better than this." "Do I? Maybe this is exactly what I deserve." "Stop it." Her hand found my arm again, that same gentle touch that had been driving me crazy for days. "You're a good man, Jake. You're funny and kind, and you fix things for people. You deserve someone who sees that." The way she was looking at me, like I mattered, like I was worth seeing, made something crack open in my chest. It had been so long since anyone had looked at me like that. "Mel, I see it," she whispered. "I see you." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. I was acutely aware of how close she was standing, how her thumb was tracing small circles on my forearm, how her green eyes had gone soft with something that definitely wasn't sisterly affection. "This is crazy," I said, but I didn't step away. Is it? Is it crazy to want someone who wants you back?" From the office came the sound of Lisa's laughter, warm and genuine and directed at someone who wasn't her husband. The sound hit me like a slap, and something inside me finally snapped. I kissed her. It wasn't planned or romantic, or any of the things first kisses are supposed to be. It was desperate and hungry and tasted like coffee and guilt and the first real emotion I'd felt in months. Melissa melted into me, her hands fisting in my shirt, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this, just us, just the feeling of being wanted. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Oh God," she whispered. "We can't." "I know." "She's my sister." "I know." "This is so wrong." "I know." I cupped her face in my hands, my thumb tracing her cheek. But I can't remember the last time something felt this right. The office door opened, and we sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Lisa emerged, still on her phone, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. "Absolutely. The Morrison case files are in my briefcase. I'll review them tonight." She paused, listening. "No, Jake won't be a problem. He has his little hobbies to keep him busy." Little hobbies. Like my business was some quaint pastime instead of the thing that paid for her designer suits and expensive phone plan. She ended the call and grabbed her briefcase, finally noticing the tension in the room. "Everything okay in here?" "Perfect," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just discussing Mel's job search." "Right. Well, some of us have actual jobs to get to." She headed for the door, then paused. "Mel, you can't stay here forever. Jake and I need our space." "Of course," Melissa replied, her voice carefully neutral. "I'll start looking for a place this week." "Good. See you tonight. Late." The front door closed behind her, leaving us alone with the weight of what had just happened. Melissa wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking young and uncertain. "Jake, don't." I moved closer, but didn't touch her. "Don't apologize for being the first person in months to make me feel human." But she's my sister. And she's my wife. And she's been cheating on me for months with someone who makes her laugh the way she used to laugh with me. Melissa's eyes widened. "You know? I'm not stupid, Mel. Just stupid enough to pretend I didn't notice." I ran a hand through my hair, suddenly exhausted. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the way she looks at me like I'm something unpleasant she has to deal with. I've been living like a ghost in my own house. "So what do we do?" The question hung between us, loaded with possibility and danger in equal measure. What did we do? The smart thing would be to pretend the kiss never happened, to maintain the status quo, to keep playing the role of the oblivious husband while my wife conducted her affair right under my nose. But I was tired of being smart, tired of being ignored, tired of settling for scraps when someone was offering me a feast. "I don't know," I said finally, "but I know I can't keep living like this." She nodded, understanding passing between us without words. Whatever happened next, we'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The only question was how far we were willing to go. As it turned out, the answer was much farther than either of us imagined. 3 weeks later, I was staring at a pregnancy test in Melissa's bathroom. 2 pink lines that would change everything, while my wife sat in our kitchen texting her lover, completely unaware that her world was about to explode. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock, it kicks down the door and burns the house down around you, and sometimes you're holding the matches. The boxing gym at 6 a.m. was my sanctuary, a place where problems could be solved with leather gloves and heavy bags, where the only conversation was the rhythm of fists against padding. I'd been coming here for 2 years, ever since Lisa's career took off and our marriage started its slow-motion collapse. "You're dropping your left again," growled Tommy Kowalski, the gym's owner and my unofficial therapist. At 62, Tommy had seen enough of life to recognize a man coming apart at the seams. "Whatever's eating at you, take it out on the bag, not your technique." I threw a combination that would have made my high school boxing coach proud, but my mind wasn't on form. It was on Melissa, who'd been living in our guest room for 3 weeks now, and the increasingly dangerous game we'd been playing. Stolen kisses in the kitchen when Lisa was at work, hands that lingered too long when passing coffee cups, conversations that stopped abruptly when my wife walked into the room. We hadn't crossed the final line yet, but we were dancing right up to it with the dedication of professionals. There you go, Tommy nodded approvingly as I hammered the heavy bag. Now you're fighting instead of flailing. If only he knew what I was really fighting. Guilt, desire, and the growing certainty that my marriage was already over, I was just too much of a coward to admit it. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Coffee's ready. Lisa left early for court. Translation. We had the house to ourselves for an hour before I had to open the shop. These stolen moments had become the highlight of my days, which probably said everything about the state of my marriage. I wrapped up my workout and headed home, where I found Melissa in the kitchen wearing one of my old college t-shirts and a pair of shorts that should have been illegal in 17 states. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was humming while she scrambled eggs. Morning, handsome. She stood on her toes to kiss my cheek, a gesture that had become routine and torture in equal measure. Morning, beautiful. I wrapped my arms around her from behind, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. Lisa gone already? Left 20 minutes ago. Said something about depositions and discovery. I stopped listening after she complained about you leaving dishes in the sink. I put one coffee mug in the sink. One. The horror. She leaned back against me, and I felt some of the morning's tension ease. This was what I'd been missing. Someone who was happy to see me, who didn't treat my presence like an inconvenience. Mel, I started, then stopped. We'd been having this conversation for weeks, the one about what we were doing and where it was going and why we couldn't seem to stop. I know, she said softly. We need to talk. Yeah, we do. She turned in my arms, her hands resting on my chest. Jake, I can't keep doing this. Living here, pretending everything's normal, watching her treat you like garbage While you what? While I fall in love with my sister's husband. The words hit me like a physical blow. Love. She'd said it. Put it out there where we couldn't pretend it was just attraction or loneliness or revenge against Lisa's neglect. Mel, I know it's crazy. I know it's wrong. But I can't help how I feel. Her eyes filled with tears. You're everything she doesn't deserve, and I'm tired of watching her waste what I'd give anything to have. I cupped her face in my hands, my thumbs brushing away tears. You think this is easy for me? You think I don't know exactly how wrong this is? Then why? Because for the first time in 2 years, I feel alive when I'm with you. Because you look at me like I matter. Because when you smile, I remember who I used to be before I became the invisible man in my own marriage. She kissed me then, soft and sweet and desperate, and I was lost. We'd been building to this moment for weeks, circling each other like planets caught in gravity's pull, and resistance finally crumbled. Upstairs, I whispered against her lips. Jake, if we do this, I know, everything changes. She searched my eyes, looking for certainty I wasn't sure I possessed. But I was sure of one thing, I couldn't keep living in the emotional wasteland my marriage had become. Okay, she whispered. Okay. We made it as far as the living room couch. Afterward, we lay tangled together, her head on my chest, both of us breathing hard and trying to process what had just happened. The guilt was there, sharp and immediate, but it was overwhelmed by something else. Relief. The relief of finally taking what I wanted instead of settling for scraps. No regrets? She asked, her voice small. Only that it took us this long. She lifted her head to look at me, green eyes serious. What happens now? I don't know. But I can't go back to pretending you're just my sister-in-law. Not after this. And Lisa? The mention of my wife's name should have brought crushing guilt, but all I felt was a hollow ache where my marriage used to be. Lisa made her choice months ago. She just hasn't bothered to tell me about it yet. Melissa traced patterns on my chest, her touch sending aftershocks through my nervous system. This is going to get complicated. It already is complicated. At least now it's complicated in a way that doesn't make me feel dead inside. She smiled at that, the first real smile I'd seen from her since this whole mess started. You're not dead inside. You're just married to someone who can't see what she has. Had. I corrected. What she had. We might have stayed there forever, wrapped up in each other and the fantasy that we could somehow make this work without consequences. But reality has a way of intruding on even the most perfect moments. The sound of a car door slamming in the driveway sent us scrambling for clothes like teenagers caught by parents. Lisa wasn't supposed to be home for hours, but there she was, her key turning in the front door lock. Shit, 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 Melissa whispered, pulling on her shorts while I struggled into my gym clothes. Bathroom, I hissed. Say you were taking a shower. She nodded and ran for the guest bathroom, leaving me to face my wife alone, reeking of intimacy and guilt and my sister-in-law's perfume. Lisa walked in looking harried and annoyed, her briefcase in one hand and her phone in the other. Court got postponed, she announced without looking at me. The judge had a family emergency. That's too bad, I managed, hoping my voice sounded normal. Where's Mel? Shower, I think. I just got back from the gym. She finally looked at me, and for a terrifying moment I was sure she could see everything. The guilt, the satisfaction, the complete transformation of her marriage while she'd been busy destroying it herself. You look flushed, she observed. Good workout. She shrugged and headed for the kitchen, already dismissing me from her attention. I'm going to work from home today. Try to keep the noise down. Sure thing. I watched her disappear into her office, phone already pressed to her ear, and marveled at the irony. Here I was, having just committed adultery on our living room couch, and she was more interested in her phone call than her husband. Melissa emerged from the bathroom 10 minutes later, hair damp and looking appropriately shower-fresh. She caught my eye and raised an eyebrow in question. I nodded toward Lisa's office and shrugged. Crisis averted, for now. But as I headed to work that morning, I knew we'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Whatever happened next, there was no going back to the way things were. I just had no idea how spectacularly everything was about to explode. 2 weeks later, I was standing in Melissa's apartment bathroom, staring at a pregnancy test with 2 bright pink lines, while my wife sat at home texting her lover, completely unaware that her world was about to come crashing down around her ears. The test clattered to the floor as Melissa's knees gave out, and I caught her before she could fall. Oh God, Jake, what are we going to do? I looked at the woman in my arms, my lover, my sister-in-law, the mother of my child, and realized I was about to become the villain in a story that was just getting started. We're going to tell the truth, I said, surprised by the certainty in my voice. All of it. Because sometimes the only way out of hell is straight through the fire. The pregnancy test sat on our kitchen counter like a small plastic bomb, its 2 pink lines declaring war on everything I thought I knew about my life. Melissa stood beside me, pale and shaking, while Lisa's voice drifted from her office. Another late-night work call that we all knew had nothing to do with legal briefs. We have to tell her, Melissa whispered for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. I know. Tonight? I know. She's going to kill us both. Probably. The absurd normalcy of the moment struck me. Here we were, discussing the implosion of my marriage while Lisa laughed at something her lover said, completely oblivious to the fact that her sister was carrying her husband's child. Jake, Melissa grabbed my arm. What if she... The office door opened, cutting off her words. Lisa emerged, still holding her phone, her face flushed with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Sorry about that, she said, not sounding sorry at all. Work emergency. Right. Work. I picked up the pregnancy test, holding it like a weapon. Lisa, we need to talk. Can it wait? I'm exhausted, and I have an early meeting. She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes focusing on what I was holding. What is that? A pregnancy test. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession, confusion, hope, and then something that looked almost like panic. Is it? Are we? No, I said simply. We're not. The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa's eyes moved from the test to me to Melissa, who had gone so pale I was worried she might faint. I don't understand, Lisa said slowly. It's mine, Melissa whispered. Yours. Lisa's voice was flat, emotionless. You're pregnant. Yes. And you're telling us because... This was the moment, the point of no return. I could have lied, could have said Melissa was scared and needed support, could have protected my marriage for a little while longer. Instead, I chose the truth. Because it's mine. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Lisa stared at me, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly, her brain trying to process information that didn't compute. Yours, she repeated. Yes. You and Mel. Her voice was getting higher, more strained. You and my sister. Lisa, Melissa started. How long? The question came out as a snarl. I could have minimized it, could have said it was just once, a mistake, but I was done lying, done pretending, done protecting everyone's feelings except my own. 2 months. 2 months. She was nodding now, a jerky, mechanical motion. 2 months you've been sleeping with my sister under my roof. Lisa, please. While I was working, while I was trying to build a career, you were screwing around with Mel. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Here she was, acting outraged about my affair while her phone buzzed with messages from her own lover. But pointing that out would have to wait. You want to talk about screwing around? I asked quietly. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not the only one who's been busy these past few months. I don't know what you're talking about. Really, because I know about David. The name hit her like a physical blow. Her face went white, then red, then white again. David Chen, her colleague at the law firm, the one she'd been texting at all hours, the one who made her laugh, the one she thought I was too stupid to notice. How did you? I'm not blind, Lisa. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the way you look at me like I'm something you stepped in. Yeah, you think I didn't notice you checking out of our marriage months ago? Melissa was looking back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. That's different, Lisa said weakly. Is it? How is it different? Because... She stopped, realizing there was no good answer, no way to justify her affair while condemning mine. Because what? Because you fell out of love with me first? Because David's more successful than I am? Because you decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore? It wasn't supposed to happen. Neither was this. I gestured between Melissa and myself. But when your wife treats you like furniture for 6 months and her sister treats you like a human being, things happen. Lisa's composure finally cracked. So this is my fault? You cheating with my sister is somehow my fault? I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying it's over. The words surprised me as much as they surprised her. I hadn't planned to ask for a divorce tonight, but saying it out loud felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for months. Over? Her voice was small, uncertain. Come on, Lisa. We've been over for months. We just didn't have the guts to admit it. She looked around the kitchen, our kitchen, where we'd eaten breakfast together for 6 years, where we'd planned our future, where everything had slowly died while we weren't paying attention. I want her out, she said suddenly, pointing at Melissa. Tonight. I want her out of my house. Our house, I corrected, and she's not going anywhere. She's carrying your child. The words came out as a shriek. She's pregnant with my husband's baby, and you want her to stay here? I want a lot of things, Lisa. I want a wife who remembers I exist. I want to come home to someone who's happy to see me. I want to feel like a person instead of an inconvenience. I moved closer to Melissa, taking her hand. Mel gives me those things. So what, you're choosing her? You're choosing my sister over me? The question hung between us, loaded with 6 years of marriage and a lifetime of consequences. In that moment, looking at Lisa, really looking at her, I realized I didn't recognize the woman I'd married. Somewhere along the way, she'd become a stranger who happened to share my last name. I'm choosing someone who chooses me back. Lisa's face crumpled, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, hurt, human. Then her phone buzzed with a text message, and she instinctively reached for it. The gesture said everything. Even in the middle of our marriage imploding, even while discovering her husband's affair and her sister's pregnancy, her first instinct was to check her phone, to see if David needed her. Go ahead, I said quietly. Answer it. She looked at the phone, then at me, then at Melissa. For a second, I thought she might choose us, might choose to fight for what we'd built together. Instead, she swiped to read the message. I can't do this right now, she said, backing toward the door. I can't. I need to think. Lisa, wait. Melissa started after her. Don't. Lisa's voice was sharp, dangerous. Don't you dare try to comfort me. You're my sister. You were supposed to be on my side. I never meant for this to happen, but it did happen. You made it happen. She looked between us with something that might have been hatred. You both made it happen. She grabbed her keys and purse, heading for the door. I'm staying at David's tonight. Don't wait up. The front door slammed behind her, leaving Melissa and me alone with the wreckage of my marriage and the beginning of something else entirely. Well, I said after a long moment, that went better than expected. Melissa stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Better? Jake, she looked like she wanted to murder us both. But she didn't, and now it's out there. No more secrets, no more lying, no more pretending. I pulled her into my arms, surprised by how right it felt. Just us, and whatever comes next. What if she never forgives me? Then that's her choice. But I'm done living my life based on what Lisa wants or doesn't want. She checked out of our marriage months ago. Now she knows I did too. Melissa leaned against me, her head on my chest, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness exactly, but the absence of the constant low-level misery that had become my normal. So, what do we do now? She asked. Now we figure out how to be a family, the three of us. I placed my hand over her stomach, where my child was growing. And we let Lisa figure out how to be whatever she wants to be with David. It should have felt like an ending. Instead, it felt like the first day of the rest of my life. I just had no idea how ugly the rest of my life was about to get. The police arrived at 2:47 a.m., their red and blue lights painting our quiet suburban street like a crime scene. I watched from the living room window as Officer Martinez approached our front door, his expression suggesting this wasn't his first domestic disturbance call of the evening. Lisa had returned an hour earlier, drunk and furious, pounding on the door and screaming accusations that had woken half the neighborhood. When Melissa tried to calm her down, my wife had launched herself at her pregnant sister like a woman possessed. "Mr. Morrison?" Officer Martinez consulted his notepad. "We received a call about a domestic disturbance." "That's right. My wife attacked her sister." I gestured toward the living room, where Melissa sat on the couch holding an ice pack to her cheek, while Lisa paced like a caged animal. "She's pregnant," Lisa announced to the officer, pointing at Melissa with a shaking finger. "Pregnant with my husband's baby, in my house, under my roof." Officer Martinez looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but assault is still assault, regardless of the circumstances." "Assault? She destroyed my marriage." "Actually," I interjected, "you did that yourself months ago with David Chen." Lisa's face went purple. "How dare you?" "Ladies and gentlemen," Officer Martinez raised his voice, "let's all take a breath here. Mrs. Morrison, I need you to sit down and calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down. This is my house, and I want them out." "It's our house," I corrected. "Joint property. She has as much right to be here as you do." "Not anymore, she doesn't." Lisa lunged toward Melissa again, but Officer Martinez stepped between them. "That's enough. Mrs. Morrison, you're under arrest for assault." The next few minutes were a blur of handcuffs and Miranda rights, with Lisa screaming about betrayal and injustice while her sister cried quietly on the couch. The neighbors had gathered on their front lawns, phones out, recording the spectacular collapse of the Morrison marriage for posterity. "Jake," Melissa whispered as the police car pulled away. "What have we done?" I sat beside her, pulling her close, breathing in the scent of her hair mixed with the lingering aroma of Lisa's rage. "We told the truth. The rest is just consequences." But even I had to admit the consequences were piling up faster than I'd anticipated. Lisa spent the night in jail, which gave me time to think about what came next. By morning, I'd made several decisions that would have surprised the man I'd been 6 months ago. The old Jake would have bailed out his wife, apologized for the mess, and tried to fix everything. The new Jake, the one who'd been ignored and dismissed and treated like an inconvenience for months, had different plans. I called my lawyer first thing Monday morning. "Divorce?" Tom Bradley had handled my business contracts for years, but family law was new territory for both of us. "Jake, are you sure about this? Maybe counseling?" "Tom, my wife spent the weekend in jail for attacking her pregnant sister. The sister who's carrying my child? I think we're past counseling." "Jesus. Okay. Grounds?" "Irreconcilable differences, plus adultery on both sides, so it should be pretty straightforward." "Both sides? It's complicated." "I'll bet it is. What about assets?" I looked around the house Lisa and I had bought together, filled with furniture we'd chosen together, representing a life we'd built together and systematically destroyed. "I want the house and my business. She can have everything else." "Jake?" "I'm not being vindictive, Tom. I'm being practical. Mel's going to need a stable place to raise the baby, and Lisa has other priorities now." Those other priorities became clear when she showed up at the house Tuesday afternoon with David Chen in tow. Seeing them together was like looking at a funhouse mirror version of my marriage. He was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was average, polished where I was rough around the edges, successful in the way that impressed people at cocktail parties. "Jake?" Lisa's voice was carefully controlled. "We need to talk." "I figured we might. David, good to finally meet you officially." David had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Mr. Morrison, I want you to know that you've been sleeping with my wife for months. Yeah, I know. Hard to miss the signs once you know what to look for." "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," Lisa said. "How was it supposed to happen? You were going to ask for a divorce before you started your affair? Or were you planning to keep David as a side piece indefinitely?" She flinched. "Don't be crude." "Crude?" "Lisa, you had another man's tongue down your throat while your sister was living under our roof. I think crude is relative at this point." David stepped forward, playing the protective boyfriend. "There's no need to be hostile." "Hostile?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "David, you've been sleeping with my wife for months. Hostile would be me introducing your face to my fist. This is just conversation. Jake, please. Melissa appeared in the doorway, her hand resting protectively on her still small bump. Let's just get through this. Lisa's eyes locked onto her sister's stomach with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pain, maybe, or regret. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, might try to bridge the gap that had opened between them. Instead, she hardened. I want you out, both of you. Not happening, I said simply. This is my house too. It was your house too. Now it's mine. I pulled out the papers Tom had prepared. Divorce petition. You'll notice I'm asking for the house, my business, and primary custody of any children born during the marriage. Lisa's face went white as she scanned the documents. You can't be serious. Dead serious. You want David? You can have him, but you don't get to destroy our marriage and then dictate terms. The baby isn't even yours legally. Actually, it is. Any child born to a married woman is presumed to be her husband's, regardless of biological paternity. And since Mel and I aren't married, and you and I are still legally wed, I shrugged. Congratulations. You're about to become a stepmother. The legal technicality hit her like a physical blow. In her rush to punish me, she'd forgotten that the law didn't care about biology, only about marriage certificates and presumptions of legitimacy. You bastard, she whispered. Probably, but I'm a bastard who's tired of being treated like dirt in his own house. I moved to stand beside Melissa, taking her hand. You made your choice, Lisa. You chose David over our marriage. Now live with it. David, who'd been silent during this exchange, finally found his voice. Lisa, maybe we should go. Let the lawyers handle this. Smart man. He could see which way the wind was blowing. Lisa looked around the house one more time, at the life she was walking away from, at the sister she'd alienated, at the husband she'd driven into another woman's arms. For a second, I thought she might fight for what we'd had. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. Fine. You want the house? Take it. You want my sister? Take her too. But don't expect me to pretend this is some great love story. You're both cheaters, and cheaters always get what they deserve in the end. She dropped the divorce papers on the coffee table and headed for the door, David trailing behind her like a well-dressed puppy. Lisa, Melissa called after her. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. My soon-to-be ex-wife paused in the doorway, her back still to us. You didn't hurt me, Mel. You showed me who you really are, both of you. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything I'd thought I wanted, and the beginning of everything I'd never known I needed. Well, I said, sinking onto the couch beside Melissa, that went about as well as expected. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. Do you think she'll ever forgive us? I don't know, but I know I can't live my life waiting for Lisa's approval anymore. I placed my hand over her stomach, where our child was growing. We're going to be okay, Mel. All three of us. It felt like a promise. It felt like hope. It felt like the calm before the storm. Because Lisa Morrison might have been many things, but she'd never been a woman who accepted defeat gracefully. And I was about to learn that a woman scorned with a law degree and nothing left to lose was a dangerous enemy indeed. The real war was just beginning. The first sign that Lisa wasn't going down without a fight came 3 weeks later when I arrived at Morrison Tech Repair to find a process server waiting by my door. Jake Morrison? That's me. You've been served. The papers were thick, official, and completely devastating. Lisa was contesting the divorce, demanding half of my business, claiming alienation of affection against Melissa, and, this was the kicker, seeking an emergency restraining order to prevent me from having contact with her unborn child. Bastard, I muttered, scanning the legal jargon that basically accused me of being an unfit father to a child that wasn't even born yet. My phone rang. Tom Bradley, my lawyer, sounding harried. Jake, please tell me you didn't threaten your wife. What? No. Why would you? Because she's claiming you made violent threats against her and her boyfriend. She's painting you as some kind of dangerous stalker who seduced her innocent sister as revenge. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Innocent? Tom, she was living in my house for a month before anything happened. She knew exactly what she was doing. Can you prove that? The question hung in the air like smoke. Could I prove that Melissa had pursued me as much as I'd pursued her? Could I prove that Lisa had been cheating first? Could I prove any of the things that mattered in a courtroom versus the story Lisa was spinning? We'll figure it out, Tom said, but his voice lacked conviction. In the meantime, don't contact Lisa directly. Don't go near her workplace. Don't give her any ammunition. I hung up and stared at the legal papers. realizing that my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, was playing for keeps. She wasn't just trying to end our marriage, she was trying to destroy me. The campaign of destruction escalated quickly. First, she somehow convinced 3 of my biggest commercial clients that I was emotionally unstable and going through a difficult time that might affect my work quality. All 3 canceled their service contracts within a week. Then she started calling my friends, our friends, with her version of events. According to Lisa, I'd been having an affair with her teenage sister. Melissa was 28, but Lisa conveniently forgot to mention that. Gotten the poor girl pregnant and thrown away a loving marriage for a cheap fling. Jake, man, what the hell is going on? My friend Mike called me Thursday night, his voice confused and concerned. Lisa says you've lost your mind. Lisa says a lot of things these days. What did she tell you? That you've been sleeping with Mel for months, that you got her pregnant and now you're trying to steal Lisa's house. I closed my eyes, feeling the carefully constructed narrative wrapping around my throat like a noose. Mike, did she mention that she's been cheating on me with David Chen for months? Did she mention that she attacked Mel when she found out about the pregnancy? Did she mention any of that? Silence on the other end of the line. Shit, Jake. She made it sound like you just snapped. I didn't snap. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice my wife had checked out of our marriage. But Mel's her sister, man. That's pretty screwed up. Yeah, it is. But so is ignoring your husband for 6 months while you conduct an affair with your coworker. More silence. Then, I don't know what to believe anymore. That was exactly what Lisa was counting on. Confusion, doubt, the social pressure of being labeled the villain in a story where everyone had to pick sides. The worst part was watching the effect on Melissa. She'd started working as a substitute teacher at the local elementary school, but somehow word of the scandal had reached the school board. They didn't fire her, they couldn't legally, but they stopped calling her for assignments. It's okay, she insisted, but I could see the strain in her face, the way she flinched every time we went out in public and people stared. We'll figure something else out. This isn't okay, Mel. She's trying to destroy both of us. She's hurt. People do crazy things when they're hurt. This isn't crazy. This is calculated. I showed her the latest legal filing. Lisa was now claiming that I'd been emotionally abusive throughout our marriage, that the affair with Melissa was part of a pattern of manipulation and control. She's rewriting history to make herself the victim. Melissa read through the papers, her face growing paler with each page. Jake, some of this, if people believe this, they won't, because it's not true. Truth doesn't always matter in court, or in public opinion. She was right, and we both knew it. Lisa had the advantage of being the wronged wife, the professional woman whose husband had betrayed her with her own sister. It was a compelling narrative, made more powerful by the fact that it contained just enough truth to be believable. The breaking point came when Melissa's parents called. They want to see me, she said after hanging up, her voice hollow. They want to discuss the situation. That doesn't sound good? Lisa got to them first. They think I seduced you, that I deliberately broke up your marriage. What did you tell them? The truth. That we fell in love, that their other daughter was already cheating, that sometimes life is complicated and messy and people get hurt. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't think they believed me. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her shake against me. This was what Lisa wanted. To isolate us, to turn everyone against us, to make us pariahs in our own community. We could leave, I said suddenly. Sell the business, take whatever we can get from the house, and start over somewhere else. Run away? Strategic retreat. She pulled back to look at me, her green eyes serious. Is that what you want? To let her win? I thought about it. Really thought about it. We could disappear, start fresh in a new city where no one knew our story. Raise our child away from the poison Lisa was spreading. Build a life free from the wreckage of my marriage. It would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing. No, I said finally. I'm tired of running from Lisa's tantrums. I'm tired of letting her control the narrative. And I'm damn tired of being treated like the villain when she's the one who destroyed our marriage. So what do we do? I looked at the woman carrying my child, the woman who'd shown me what it felt like to be wanted again, the woman who was suffering because she'd chosen me over family loyalty. Lisa wanted a war? Fine, she could have one. We fight back, but we fight dirty. Because if 6 years of marriage had taught me anything about Lisa Morrison, it was that she kept secrets, lots of them. And some of those secrets weren't the kind that looked good in divorce court. It was time to remind my wife that she wasn't the only one who could play hardball, The gloves were coming off, and I was about to show her exactly what kind of man she'd married and what kind of enemy she'd made. The thing about living with someone for 6 years is that you learn their secrets, all of them. The embarrassing ones, the shameful ones, and the ones that could destroy a legal career if they ever came to light. I was sitting in Tommy's bar at 2 in the afternoon, nursing a beer and contemplating the nuclear option when my phone rang. Tom Bradley, my lawyer, and he sounded like he'd been gargling gravel. "Jake, we have a problem. A big one." "Let me guess. Lisa found another way to screw me?" "She's claiming you threatened her life. Says you told her you'd make her disappear if she didn't drop the divorce proceedings." I set down my beer carefully, feeling the familiar rage building in my chest. "Tom, I haven't spoken to Lisa in 2 weeks. The only contact we've had has been through lawyers." "She has a witness, David Chen. He's backing up her story." "Of course he is. They're probably planning to move in together once she gets half my assets." "Jake, this is serious. If the judge believes her, then I guess it's time to stop playing defense." I hung up and pulled out my laptop, scrolling through the files I'd been hoping I wouldn't have to use. Lisa thought she was the only one who could destroy reputations? Time to remind her that information was a two-way street. The first file was from 3 years ago, security camera footage from our home system that Lisa thought I'd deleted. It showed her coming home at 3 a.m., stumbling drunk, with a man who definitely wasn't me. The timestamp was from a weekend when she'd claimed to be at a legal conference in Chicago. The second file was more recent. Bank records showing cash withdrawals that didn't match any of our household expenses. 500 here, 1,000 there, always from ATMs near David's apartment building. The third file was the most damaging, emails between Lisa and David dating back 8 months, discussing not just their affair, but their plans to manage me during the divorce, including David's suggestion that they could provoke Jake into doing something stupid that would help their case. I'd found the emails weeks ago when Lisa had carelessly left her laptop open and logged into her personal account. The old Jake would have confronted her directly, demanded an explanation, tried to work things out. The new Jake had simply copied everything to a flash drive and waited for the right moment. That moment had arrived. I called Tom back. "I'm sending you some files. Forward them to Lisa's lawyer with a message." "What kind of message?" "That if she wants to play dirty, we can play dirty, and I've got a lot more ammunition than she does." The response came within 2 hours. Lisa's lawyer wanted to schedule an emergency meeting to discuss a mutually beneficial resolution. Translation? They knew they were screwed. The meeting was set for Friday afternoon at Tom's office. Lisa showed up looking like she'd aged 5 years in the past month, with David hovering beside her like an anxious bodyguard. Her lawyer, Patricia Wells, was a shark in a $1,000 suit who'd built her reputation on destroying men in divorce court. "Mr. Morrison," Patricia began, "my client is willing to consider a more amicable arrangement." "How amicable?" Tom asked. "She'll drop the restraining order and the claims of abuse in exchange for a standard 50-50 split of assets." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You're kidding, right?" Lisa spoke for the first time since arriving. "Jake, please, let's just end this." "Oh, we're going to end it, but not on your terms." I nodded to Tom, who slid a folder across the table. "Patricia, you might want to look at Exhibit A." She opened the folder and her face went pale as she saw the bank records, the emails, the security footage. Lisa peered over her shoulder and went white. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "From your laptop, your personal email, your own security system." I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the moment. Did you really think I was too stupid to notice what you were doing, or did you just not care because you thought I'd never fight back? Patricia was speed-reading through the emails, her expression growing more grim by the page. "Lisa, we need to discuss—" "No." Lisa stood up abruptly. "This is blackmail." "This is evidence," Tom corrected. "Evidence of adultery, financial misconduct, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The kind of evidence that tends to make judges very unsympathetic to claims of spousal abuse." David finally found his voice. "You can't use private communications." "Actually, we can. They were obtained from a computer in the marital home, accessed by someone with legitimate authority to use that computer." Tom was enjoying this almost as much as I was. "It's all perfectly admissible." Lisa sank back into her chair, the fight going out of her like air from a punctured balloon. "What do you want?" "I want you to drop all your bullshit claims. I want an uncontested divorce with me keeping the house and my business. I want you to stop harassing Melissa and her employer. And I want a public apology for the lies you've been spreading about both of us." "Public apology?" "Facebook post, minimum. Admitting that you were having an affair, that you lied about the timeline of events, and that Melissa and I are not the villains you made us out to be." Patricia was shaking her head. "My client will never agree to—" "Then we'll see you in court, where these emails will become part of the public record, where David's law firm will learn about his relationship with a married client, where the state bar will learn about Lisa's use of marital funds to finance her affair." I stood up, straightening my jacket. "Your choice." Lisa looked at David, who was staring at the table like it held the secrets of the universe. No help there. He was probably calculating how much his own career would suffer if this went public. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked quietly. 24 hours. After that, we file a motion to compel discovery on all your financial records, all your communications, and all your professional conduct for the past year." Tom gathered up the papers. "I should mention that adultery is still grounds for disciplinary action by the state bar, especially when it involves misuse of client relationships. We left them sitting in the conference room, Lisa staring at the wreckage of her carefully constructed narrative, while David probably wondered how he'd gotten involved with such a vindictive woman." "Think she'll take the deal?" Tom asked as we walked to the parking garage. "She doesn't have a choice. Her career is more important to her than her pride." I was right. The next morning, I woke up to find a notification on my phone. Lisa had posted a lengthy Facebook confession admitting to her affair, acknowledging that she'd been unfair in her characterization of my relationship with Melissa, and asking for privacy during this difficult time. The comments section was brutal. Friends and colleagues who'd been sympathetic to her story were now calling her a hypocrite and a liar. The narrative had flipped completely. She was no longer the wronged wife, but the cheating spouse who'd tried to destroy her husband when he found happiness with someone else. "Is it over?" Melissa asked, reading the post over my shoulder. "The legal part is. The rest?" I shrugged. "People have short memories. Give it a few months and this will all be old news."